It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video. Now this is one that I covered way back when I first started doing all these videos, and it's called MeshCentral. So it's a remote machine management software system that runs through your browser, and it's really incredible. So if you've been looking for a way to do remote support for your organization, for your friends, for your family, for yourself with just your machines around your home, this is really a great tool. And I've shown several of these over the year. MeshCentral remotely. There's also Guacamole, which I've never gotten into and never shown, but it's a pretty cool looking application as well. But I like MeshCentral. It's really great, and they've done even more to it since I showed it, a year and a half or so ago. And I thought it was really worth an update. And the best thing is you can run this now in Docker. There are some folks that have made it where it runs in Docker, which is really great as well. So I went out there and found a Docker Compose file that I liked from one of the people that's done that, and kind of spun it up and checked it out, and it worked really well. So I'm pretty excited to show this to you guys. And basically getting it installed is not going to take much. You just need to have your system set up, you need to have Docker on it, and then be ready to go. So we're going to get into it right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. I wanted to open up some channels for discussion, so I've created this Rocket Chat server, and I've got it mixed up with Jitsi Meet. I've created a few channels already to start up some discussions, but of course we can always open up more channels. If you'd like to jump in and send me a direct message or just ask a question in one of the channels, I'll be monitoring the system. It'll be up and running. I'm going to leave this up and going so that we can have a place where we can all come together and answer each other's questions and have good discussions and good conversations. It's discuss.opensourceisawesome.com. Again, that's discuss.opensourceisawesome.com. I'll have the links in the show notes and the description. Okay, so coming out of this, out of the gate with MeshCentral, you can run MeshCentral straight up on the hardware. You do not have to use Docker if you don't want to, and there's instructions out there on how to do it. And I've got a video from way back when I started on how to do it as well, so I'll link that down in the description. It's a little older. You might want to go and double check and make sure the instructions are still the same, but I think that they are. I don't think they've changed it much. And then here on the MeshCentral site, the guy who makes it, Elon, he's got lots of really great videos about how to use MeshCentral and how to install it and what you can do with it. And it can really do a lot more than even I'm going to show you today. But I'm going to help you get it set up and ready and running. And today we're going to use Docker for that, which is always kind of a favorite of mine, because it means that I can really put a lot of things on a single system that normally you would just be running a single server to do that thing. And why use up an entire server for something that doesn't need it? So I'm going to go out here to this particular Docker Hub entry, and I like the way that this person has done this, and it says, he's updated it 5 days ago, which is great, so he's updating things. Now when you come here, you're just going to see kind of the base information for what he's got going. It's the same thing as you get over here on the GitHub site, so I always like to see if there's a link to GitHub, and I do go check out their GitHub site to see if there's extra files that maybe I need to make things work. So if you're ever trying to do this and you're like, I want to tinker around with this, try to do what Brian did and just see if I can get it running, check the GitHub site if they have one when they do a Docker Compose or Docker file, to make sure that you're not missing some kind of configuration file or something like that. In this case, there is a config template, but it actually comes down whenever you do the Docker stuff, so you can kind of just check it out and see if you see things that maybe you're like missing. This one's pretty straightforward. I really like it. Pretty cool. So we're going to start it from scratch. So I've got my terminal up here in the background, and I've got the font enlarged a bit here. I'm going to make it a little bigger. So first thing we're going to do is just create a folder to kind of hold all this in. We're going to create one just called MeshCentral, so it's super easy to identify. Oops, I'm not going to CD into it. We're going to make a directory for it. Come on, Brian, wake up. Make directory, MeshCentral, and then we're going to CD into MeshCentral now that we've got it. And I'm just going to clear that out, and we'll keep the text up at the top of the screen for you. Now we're going to need a Docker Compose file, so we're going to do nano docker-compose.yml. Okay, make sure you do that. Now you can use VI, you can use Vim, you can use Emacs, you can use whatever you want. I just use nano because it's simple. Then we're just going to grab basically this text, and this will be linked in the show notes in the description. We're going to copy that we're going to go back to our terminal here, and we're just going to paste it in with Control-Shift-V, like Victor. Control-Shift-V is what's going to paste into your terminal. Now there's a couple things we want to change here. So I'm going to make this just a little bit bigger so that we can kind of see the stuff. He's got some good comments in here. That's one of the things I really like. He puts in good comments so that you can figure out and understand what it is he's doing whenever you're kind of tackling these things. So when you look at this, it's going to use the mesh. It's going to be called MeshCentral. It's going to restart always, which means if it fails, it's going to try to restart. So that's usually a good thing because you want your server to be up and running. Your container name is going to be MeshCentral, and then it's going to be the image, which is his image out there on Docker Hub. Now he sets it up with the port 8086, and he points it to 443, and he kind of warns you like, hey, if you try to use port 80, MeshCentral is going to moan and it's going to try everything not to use it, but you can if you want to mess with it. So he's kind of set it up already to save you a little trouble, which I like. So I'm just going to leave it like it is. This is an open port on the system I'm going to use. If it's not an open port for you, just change this left side. Just change the left side right here. Don't change the right side, but change this side and it'll be fine, okay? Now we're going to go down here and you're going to see this part that says host name. So this is if you want to run it with a host name on your system. So that could be myserver.local. It doesn't matter, just you can put in a host name, okay? In my case, I want to run this with an actual host name where it says, hey, I'm going to get this from the outside internet as well, and then we'll set up some SSL certificates. So we'll kind of go through the whole spiel here, okay? So I'm going to set this, I'm going to call it MeshCentral at routemehome.org. So this is my inside, this is what goes into my home network, my domain that I have set up with a wildcard. So if you don't have a domain set up, you need to own that domain. So I own this domain, and I have a wildcard entry that's just *.routemehome.org that points to my home public IP address, so that I can then just create kind of on the fly subdomains, and they'll point to my home IP address, which is awesome. If you have a dynamic DNS type address, you can do the same thing probably. So just there's lots of ways to do it, and if you want a video more on how to set that up, let me know and I'll do that, but I've done it a lot in the past. So we do want to use a reverse proxy, so I'm going to put this as the IP address of my reverse proxy here inside my network, and then it wants to know if we're going to do what port that's going to be, and it's going to be 443 for me. If yours is different, make sure to put a different port there. And then iframe, so it's just set to false. I'm not going to mess with iframe, so I'm going to leave it. Allow new accounts, so I'm going to set this to false because I want to be the only person that has an account on this system, and I don't want anybody else to be able to try to register or anything like that. So we'll set that to false. If you leave it true, you're going to allow other people to register. So if you're an IT person and you're setting this up and you have a team and you want them to be able to register on the MeshCentral site, then you better leave that as true. But I'm going to change it to false. And then WebRTC, I want this to be true. It's not officially supported according to this yet, but it's coming, which means that things will be much quicker if you can get a direct peer-to-peer connection going. So I'm going to turn it on. And then he's got a couple of volumes that he's going to map here, and it says // which means where we run this Docker Compose command from, and then a folder called MeshCentral, and then he's got data, and he's got user files. So we just need to create a folder here called MeshCentral for that stuff to go into, and I think we'll be pretty much done. So I'm going to save my changes with Control-O, double check that it has the correct name, hit enter to save, and then Control-X to get out of Nano. And now we're going to make that second folder called MeshCentral. So we have a folder MeshCentral, and we're inside of it, and we're creating another one called MeshCentral. And if we do ls, we'll see that, and we have Docker Compose there. And now really all we need to do is Docker, make sure we spell it right, compose up -d. And it's going to grab the image, which it already did for me. For you, it may run, and it may take a minute. It takes a minute to download the image. I already had it because I practiced and ran through this before. Don't sweat it that it looks different if you see yours doing something different, or if it takes longer to come up. But you can see here, mine says that it's done and it's up. So we can test this. We can go to the IP address of my server, which is 192.168.7.51:8086. Now, I didn't put HTTPS on here. I just typed in the IP address and the port, and you're going to see it's probably going to fail. And it did. And there's a good reason for that. So we're going to go to HTTPS:// that same address. And now you see I get this potential security risk ahead. So I would have to accept this if I just wanted to use self-signed certificates. to be able to access MeshCentral from inside. But I already told it that I'm going to be coming to it from a proxy, so I need to go set up my proxy host. So in this case, I run NGinX Proxy Manager. Here's my NGinX Proxy Manager. Now this is running on the host that I gave it, which is that 125 address. So I'm in hosts, and I'm going to click on Add a Host, and I'm going to give it that name that I gave it inside there. I'm going to hit Tab, and then I'm going to make sure this says HTTPS. And then I'm going to put in the actual IP address of my server, because it's a different server that I'm running on from the server that this NGinX Proxy Manager is running on. And then I'm going to tell it 8086. I'm going to tell it cache assets, block exploits, WebSocket support, because we turned on WebRTC. And I'm going to click Save. So now I have my meshcentral.routmehome.org. We're going to just click it, and it's going to come up and it's going to say, hey, you made it to this page, good job. So that's what it was expecting, which is great. So let me just close this before we continue. I'll close that one too. Now I want to go get some LetsEncrypt certificates for it. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to hit Edit. And I'm going to go to SSL tab. And I'm going to say Request a new certificate. I'm going to say Force SSL. And I'm going to say I agree. And this is my email address. And I'm going to hit Save. This is going to go out and tell LetsEncrypt, hey, I want you to challenge my site here and make sure that it's valid and that I'm the owner of it, and then give me some LetsEncrypt certificates for this actual site that I just set up this reverse proxy for. So LetsEncrypt's going to go, okay, let me check and see what I can do here. It's going to run through the challenge process, and then eventually if this little thing goes away with no errors, we should have a valid SSL certificate. And if you look right here, there's my lock and everything looks good. And now we need to create my first account. So I'm going to click on that little link. So if you missed that, right here on the login page, there's this little link right here, and I'll let's see if we can blow that up. Right here, and it says create one. So we're going to click on that. I'm going to put in the username that I want. Now the fields don't resize very nicely, so I'm going to zoom back out a little bit here. And my username is going to be this, and my email is going to be that. And I'm going to create a strong password here. And a strong password again, make sure they match, and then we're going to say create account. And it's going to ask me if I want to save that. I don't, and so it's a bit warden. That's okay. I'm just going to say no. And then I've got no devices, but I'm in MeshCentral. We're done. We finished. I mean, that's probably one of the fastest installs we've ever done, and we're set up and we're already actually running. So MeshCentral is installed, and now I just need to set up a couple of things inside of MeshCentral. And MeshCentral is really incredible software, so I want to go through a few things with you guys on it. But first, let me just get into the actual use of it. So we need to create a device group, and you can create multiple device groups. So if you have a huge network, or if you have a whole lot of different people that you're supporting with this kind of thing, you can create different device groups and then group those devices, and it makes it easier to find them. So I'm just going to call this one Home. And you have two choices here. So if you're going to use the Intel AMT only, no agent, then you would click this one. I don't do that. I want the agent running on my machines because I use Linux, I use Mac OS, I use BSD. I don't use much Windows at all. I do have a Windows virtual machine that I'll set up on here just so you guys can see how that works as well. But we're going to do that all through the agent. We're not going to use it through AMT. So just leave it on that one if that's the way you want to go. And then I'm going to say Home Machines. I'm going to click OK. And now you see you get this option here to add a device. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go, because I'm logged in, this is the server that we just did, and it doesn't have an IP address. I mean, it doesn't have a desktop, it's just a server, a Ubuntu server. So I could add this one, but it's just going to give me terminal access to it. So we'll do that in a minute. But first I want to actually get into another machine. So I'm going to open up a new terminal, and I'm going to say SSH Brian at 192.168.7.125, and that's the machine that I run all of my other stuff out of, where the NGinX Proxy Manager is running. So I'm logged into that one, and I'll increase the font size there so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing. And when we say add a device, you're going to pick what is it. So you have Windows, Linux BSD, Mac OS binary, Apple Mac OS, mobile device, and then you have the uninstallers here. So I'm going to go Linux BSD, and it's going to give me this little script to run. So you can read through the script and kind of see what it's doing. Alright, so you can kind of figure out like what's happening. So it's pulling down a couple of shell scripts. You can do all this stuff if you want to and double check it, but this is how you add a device with the agent. So I'm going to click copy right here. I'm just going to close that. And I'm going to go back to that machine that I just logged into, which is right here. And I'm going to just paste in that command. And I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to ask me for my super user password. And then once I give it that, it's going to take just a second to pull that stuff down, run through the install of the agent, and it's done. So if we come back to MeshCentral, it'll refresh on its own, as you just saw, and then there's my machine. And that's the name of the machine. And you can see the agent is powered. So we can just click on the machine, and we get a whole lot of information right here about the device itself. We can see that it's got the IP address, and it says that it's a Linux 64-bit. Intel, yeah, the Intel ME, I don't have it installed or activated. That's fine. Operating system is Zorin OS 15.3, which is correct. My active user is Brian. User consent. So this is pretty nice. This is some new stuff since the last time I did this. So if you want to set up user consent, it says none right now, which means I could just jump on and take control of the desktop. So I'll show you. Desktop, and then we just click on connect, and there's the desktop. And of course I need to hit the space bar to load up, type in my password to that machine, and you can of course make this larger by maximizing the browser, you know, maximizing inside of here. So you can see this machine needs to be rebooted. So I can restart it right now, or I can restart it later. So I'm going to restart later because I want to keep using the machine for a little bit and using it for demo here. But this is it. I'm controlling the desktop. There's the Zorin menu. There's, you know, anything I need to do on this machine I can now do right through the user interface, just like I was logged into it sitting in front of it. So I'm just going to disconnect for now, and we're going to go back to desktop information. And there's quite a bit of stuff here. So there's actions. And you can see, like, what do I want to do to this thing? Do I want to wake it up? Do I want to run commands? Do I want to sleep it, reset it, power off, or uninstall the agent? So you have a few things here that you can do right from the UI, which is really great. I really like that quite a bit. Then you have notes, so you can add notes about these machines. So again, if you're an IT administrator, if you're a person running a support site, you know, and you have a whole lot of machines, you're trying to keep notes about those machines because you want to remember information about things you've done before, certain settings you may have set on purpose, issues you may have run across in the past, and how you fixed them. So that's a really nice feature to be able to add notes about it. And then logging the events. So if you have an event, you can log that as well. You can message. So you can message a thing to the client, I believe. So let's see, let's try this. Let's do, hey, need some help. Alright, so now we're looking at this on no machine. This is the same desktop we just saw, and I'm going to go back to my browser, and I'm going to send this message, and let's go see what it looks like over here on no machine. And you can see it says, hey, need some help, and I can say no or yes. Okay, so you don't get anything back on the agent side. So this is pretty nice. So if you have an IT administrator who doesn't actually have an account, you can still invite them to actually see this screen. So you can put in the guest name, the type, what we're going to do starting now, how long they'll have it, you know, 15 minutes, 16 hours, you know, whatever you want there. That's pretty cool. And then prompt for consent, and then you can say notify only that you're going to do this to the other user, and so that's pretty cool. So we can hit cancel on that for now. So you've got a lot of stuff right here just under general. Then of course you saw the desktop sharing. We also have terminal, so we can just access the terminal instead. And we can say cd ls, and then there you go, and we can say cd/home/Brian ls, and then there's Brian's files right there. So I can do a lot of stuff right through this terminal, which is pretty great, just managing it. Then we've got files. So if I want to share files, if I want to send, if I want to receive, things like that. So you get kind of this file explorer. So I can see these files. I can go into home, and again I can go into Brian, and then I can say, oh yeah, you know, I need to get something from there, and I need to move it over. And then I could also probably upload files as well. Let's see, yeah, so there's upload. So I can pick a file that I want to send over and put it in Brian's home folder on the other machine as well, which is really, really a great feature when you start talking about having to do any kind of remote support. We've got events. Let's go back. Let's disconnect that. We've got events, so we can see what kind of events are happening with this particular machine that we've got set up. We've got details, so we've got all kinds of information here. about this machine and all the internet interface stuff. We've got just all kinds of information that this pulls and that we can take a look at, which is really spectacular from a piece of software that's open source and free like this. And then you have the console. So if there's anything going on in the console, you'll see it here. And then agent action. So you can say use the default server core, create the core, upload recovery core. So you've got quite a bit of stuff that you can do through the console as well from an administrative standpoint. So that's really what it looks like when you add a machine. We're going to add, let's add one more here just I said I have a Windows machine. Let me go start it up here. Give me 1 second. All right, while that machine's getting booted up, we're going to go ahead and go through some other stuff. So here you have my account info, and there's some important stuff in here to understand. So manage authenticator app. So you can set up two-factor authentication if you want to, and you would scan this QR code with your two-factor authentication application, and that would give you a second factor of authentication in order to be able to log into this system. I think this is a really awesome feature, and it's something that anybody who's actually serious about keeping their machines secured should use. So be aware that that's there, and you probably want to set that up. You do want to grab these secondary codes just in case something comes up and you need to use them. So you can also manage your security keys as well. You can view previous logins, which I don't have any. We just logged in this first time, of course. So you can enable web notifications, and you see it pops up here to give you notifications. So you can just say allow notifications when you do that. Then you have notification settings. What do you want to be notified, or how do you want to be notified? So do I want to sound? Yes. Display a device group name. Yeah, let me know what it is. Desktop connections or device connections, device disconnections. You know, all the things you may want to know about that are happening whenever you're looking at this. Now, depending on how big your fleet is, you may not want to get notifications about all these things. So it just kind of depends. So you can change your email address right here. If you don't like the email address you put in or you want to use a new one, you can do that right there. You can, of course, change your password, and you can delete the account if you want to. Then you have your device groups. So right here you can add new device groups as well through this My Account section. Here you've got the My Events, so the things that you've been doing in kind of an audit format. Right here you've got My Files, so you can set up files that you can then upload and use for other things whenever you're doing different tasks on different machines. You've got the users, so if you're allowing more than just yourself, then you can see all of the users here, and you can manage your users as well. And then finally, you've got your server information and kind of what's going on. So in this case, the server, the available memory is 3.2 gigabytes. So it's free 3.2 gigabytes with 3.8 gigabytes total. And then here you can see the CPU load, which is pretty much nil. And then you can check out user accounts as 1, user sessions 1, device groups 1, and so on. So you get a little bit of information about the system here. And you can say, I want to download the server backup, I want to restore a server backup, check the server version, or show the server error log. You can go here to stats. So if you want to see stats, it'll give you graphs and things like that. So over here you can kind of check and see what's happening. You again have the server console. And then you have trace. So if you want to do tracing, you can say, I want to see cookies, message dispatcher, main server messages. So there's a lot of stuff here that you can actually do and get information about. So that's pretty interesting as well. Web server HTTP headers. I don't know if this will even show anything. Yeah, not right now, but it says it's tracing HTTP server headers. There we go. There's something that goes off, so that's cool. Okay. So you've got a lot of stuff here kind of in these settings that go down the left side of the pane. And of course this is where the money and the magic happens. So let me check my machine here on startup. Alright, I got my Windows virtual machine up and running here. And I'm going to go to add a device. Alright, so I'm on my Windows machine, and I know this is really small, I apologize for that, but here's the actual installer. So I'm just going to double click on this thing. And you'll see Windows protected this PC, which is always great. So if you click on that little link, it usually just gives you this run in anyways. Microsoft just, I don't understand it, but okay. They're trying to protect you from yourself, I suppose. And it says it's checking for viruses. I want to install this. And yes. And it looks like it finished. So let's go back to here. Oh yeah, there it is in the background. We're done. There's my desktop. So let's click on it. And let's go to desktop and let's connect. And there it is. Now I have control of my Windows PC. It's a little bit jittery, but again, it's running on a virtual machine. I'm not expecting it to be super performant or anything like that. But we can click on the little arrows here to kind of expand this up, make it a little bit larger. And you can see here now I've got everything kind of working the way that I would want it to work. Now, I'm going to close back out, or I'm going to disconnect from this. I'm going to go back to my machine overview. We'll go down here, and there's this, which is mesh command. There's interfaces, and then there's no VNC. So if I go to interfaces, I can kind of see all of the information about this actual machine. I can see what it looks like, what all the numbers are. I can see that there's an IP address on my normal subnet. That's great. Here, if I go to Mesh Commander, again, download MeshCentral. So this is something we've kind of done already. And then here with no VNC, I don't think this is going to work. It warns you in Firefox that you just tried to do something, so we'll just say allow that. So it's going to try to open up with VNC. Of course, it's not going to work. So we can say connect, but there's not a VNC client on that Windows machine, so it's probably not going to be able to do it. We can see if it's prompting us for anything. I don't think it was. So we can give up on that. We just close that tab down. We're done. So you see that you can actually manage and monitor and use these things, use MeshCentral for a Windows-based machine as well, which is, quite useful, especially if you have a lot of people using Windows in your network or as clients. So you've got quite a few settings here. So you can say quality, I want the quality to be 30%. Scaling, let's do 87.5%. And then let's do fast. Okay. So you see it, you can see the difference in the screen, I'm sure. It changed quite a bit, but if I open up something here, like the File Explorer, maybe it'll be a little bit quicker now. Yeah, it still kind of redraws pretty slow. I mean, Windows never really great on any kind of like remote thing, in my opinion. But it lets you get the job done if you need to control the machine for some reason, and it's pretty easy to access it. So I'm going to disconnect one more time, and I'm going to go back over here to the desktop, and I'm going to go to this setup here. And you remember we talked about the user consent. So we're going to change this to say notify user. Okay. So now I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to the desktop. I'm going to say connect. And then let's go look at this side. And you see down here, and you can see it on the other screen, hey, it says I just started a remote desktop session to your machine. So you can see this. So this is great because your end users want to know when you're connected, right? This is important for them to understand that you're getting connected to them and using their machine to do something. So I think that's a really cool feature that they added since I was on last time. I don't believe that was there a couple years ago when I did this. So we're going to disconnect again, and then we'll go back and let's go check out the other things we have. So there's also prompt for user consent. And then show the connection toolbar. We'll add it in a second and just kind of see the difference as we go. So we'll go back in, hit connect. So this time you see it doesn't connect right away. It says it's waiting for the user. So I've got to jump over here, and it prompts me and it says, hey, somebody's wanted to access your machine. Is that okay? Yeah, it's fine. And now if I go back, I should see that the machine is up, and you see it gives us the notification there. And there we go. We've got access again. So again, a really nice feature if you're trying to give your users some control over whether or not you're connecting to their machines, which is great. It'd be nice on the agent side to be able to say, yeah, I need them to go ahead and prompt me before they just access my machine, but I don't know that that's there yet. We'll look at it here in a second and see what we see. Let's go back. Is that still open? Yeah, okay, it's not. I don't think. Yeah, it is. So we'll disconnect. And then let's go back one more time. And let's change this to the last one, which says show connection. And now we'll go and we'll click it one more time, and you see it's waiting for our consent, and we'll give it, and we should get the little prompt, and it should say show the connection toolbar. Yeah, so here's the desktop with B. McGonagall. So there it is, and I can click X. So let's see, make sure we're seeing it. We are. And then as the user on the Windows side, I can click on the little X, and that should, yeah, that kicked you out. So that let me kick you out of the machine, and you'll have to ask again if you can join. So not bad. Now, of course, you're in control of whether or not you have to ask in the first place, so you could just go turn that off right here. But it's a nice feature to add that and give your users some control over what you're doing, which is great. Okay, so I didn't want to finish the video without letting you guys know this, but I came back to re-log into my MeshCentral today, and every time I kept putting in my two-factor authentication token, it kept telling me it was invalid. And then I also had locked myself out by putting in the wrong username and password several times. So be aware that there is a limit set on that, so if you do that too many times, it'll lock you out. And it's only for 10 minutes, so you got to wait 10 minutes, come back and try again. And once I got the right username and password again, then I was able to log in. But the issue is that with my two-factor authentication that I set up, I scanned everything, I tested it, made sure it worked, of course, because it wouldn't set up if you didn't. But when I went in today, it kept giving me a failed login attempt. So I had to go into my terminal and actually log into the host machine and make sure that it had the right time zone set, or that at least my client machine and my host machine had the right time zones or the same time zone set. You know, your phone as well. So make sure everything's working in the same time zone. If you don't do that, then those OTP applications will tend to have the wrong information for you and not be calculating things correctly, because they calculate things off of time along with a bunch of other keys and factors. But definitely date and time are important. So if you don't have that set up correctly, it's going to create problems in the long run. So I kind of wanted to show you what I did. So I jumped into my server, I said date, and then I noticed right away that this was way off because it's looking at UTC and it's not looking at my correct time zone. So this is the command right here that you want to use to set the time zone, at least inside of Ubuntu. Probably Ubuntu Debian, you know, any of the Debian and Ubuntu based systems. So you're going to use sudo and then time date CTL altogether, set -time zone, and then use your time zone. Now, if you're not sure what your time zone is, there's information out there on the internet on how to see the list of time zones, but it's really not that difficult, so you can just kind of jump out here. There's a page here, and I'll link this page in the show notes as well, so you guys can find this. But if you want to see what the time zones are, you can just do time date CTL list time zones. So if we just highlight that and we copy it into here, it should give us all of the possible time zones, and you can just page through this. So you see it starts with Africa, and you can either hit the down arrow key to go one at a time, or you can use your page up and page down to also go through those. But you can just jump through here and kind of find the time zones and how it's written for your location. So most of the time it's country slash you know, city, whatever your kind of closest city is if you're not in a major metropolitan area. I am technically nowhere near Chicago. I am all the way across the country from Chicago, but we're in the same time zone, so that's the one that I use. So that's how you do that. It's really not difficult at all to get that set up. But just know, if you're having issues with your OTP, or if you haven't set those things up, if you don't want to have issues if you want to install MeshCentral and Docker and stuff, make sure that the host machine has the time zone set correctly. Make sure that your machine has the time zone set correctly, and make sure that your phone is also using the correct time zone, or it could definitely create problems. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time.